welcome everybody to our cyber chat this evening. I am Mark Lefker, the Director of Education at the National Cryptologic Foundation, and I really appreciate you joining us this evening. It gives me great pleasure to introduce my colleague, Jen Langdon, who is the head of our cyber chat series, and I'll turn it over to her and she can introduce our guest speaker for this evening.
Hello, everyone. So excited to get started tonight. So Jenny Daugherty from Teach Cyber will be with us tonight, and she's going to start talking to us about the NCTA and answer any questions you have about that, as well as the cybersecurity curriculum guidelines. So in case you don't have those at your school already, we can find out what those are. And Ben and Damien, our teachers here tonight, they can answer any questions you have, and they will be talking about their experience with Teach Cyber and the CCG. So Jenny, without further ado, please enlighten us about the NCTA.
So yes, I'm Jenny Daugherty. I've been working with Dark Enterprises, which is a small nonprofit focused on cybersecurity education. And one of our flagship projects is Teach Cyber. And recently funded through the National Security Agency, the National Cybersecurity Teaching Academy. We are a managing partner for that initiative, and I'll talk a little bit more towards the end. But I was given these two questions, so that's what I did. I followed the assignment. Why we need to teach cybersecurity and how to become certified. So I see on the call, Sue is actually using Teach Cyber already. So I know she's teaching, and I'm not sure if our paths have crossed. So hopefully this will be helpful information for you and anybody else that'll be watching the recording. So why do we need to teach cybersecurity? I assume if you're watching this, you already have an inclination, but I think it's good to kind of have a framework and to think about this need and why high school education might want to step up to the challenge. I think it's always good to start with history because it informs our present. And if we look at our present, just in usage of worldwide internet users, there's been a steady incline. And I think, are pretty much aware that just about everything about our lives, from banking to health records to our school education, our data lives online. And that's how we interact and live too, because of that. But if we look at the development of the internet, security was not built into the design. So it's been an add-on, and anything that you don't intentionally build into the design can introduce weaknesses, vulnerabilities. They can be a potential for threat and ultimately attacks. And so I think it's a good thing to start with thinking about just the history and where cybersecurity has its roots then. I listed here a few resources that I've come across that I think help give that historical context. It might be a good place to start when you introduce this to students so they can start to understand why this is so important. Another avenue we often turn to is just the economic factor. So what are the financial costs? It's really difficult to quantify the kind of true costs of cybersecurity if you consider both the kind of damages and also the controls and things you can do to invest in a secure cyberspace. There's just not a lot of sharing of information when attacks happen in terms of costs. And then quantifying that across different levels, whether it's through companies at the individual level, nation state level. But there's a few figures out there that I think start to kind of resonate with why this is so important if we just look at the economic piece of that. So global ransomware costs, there's an estimate of about $20 billion this year. Cybercrime, again, how you define that matters, but in 2020, added up to more than $1 trillion. There's been a couple studies, one that looked at the cost of the single company of one cyber attack. So per cyber attack, there's some figures there. So that starts to kind of provide a picture or an answer to that question. But I think sometimes that doesn't resonate. They just seem like big numbers that you may not feel unless you work in the space or you're an employee or in some way it touches your life. But there's certainly costs at the individual level. And for information that's breached or, from stolen identity, but then we all kind of bear, because we all participate in the society at some level, the cost of not kind of pursuing cybersecurity fully. Another way of thinking about why cybersecurity is important is thinking about the workforce needs, both in terms of helping to kind of bridge that gap of the economic impact, but also because it is an exciting, dynamic career field that opening up the opportunities and exposing students earlier so that they might see the potential for a career, a professional path in something that's really dynamic and important to our economy, our society, I think is also an important aspect of why cybersecurity education is important. So again, it's really difficult to quantify. In November, on the CyberSeek website, this was the estimate of active job openings. Projected growth varies, but it's probably no shock to anybody that the estimate is that over time, over the next decade, that the number of unfilled jobs will grow in this space because of how important it is, how much of our lives are online, and how many potential vulnerabilities and threats that there are, though that space continues to grow as well. Currently, the kind of production, how many students are pursuing this path, and rough estimate is about 25,000. So if you look at that huge gap, the labor demand is outpacing supply. And if we look back then about the impact to our economy, how much of our individual lives and data are on cyberspace, we don't have enough individuals there protecting and securing and working together through different aspects of cybersecurity, from the technical side, the social side, the policy side. So there's just a huge need to think about bringing more cybersecurity education to the K-12 level. So really quickly, what is cybersecurity? So this is a definition from NIST. And if you're in this already, these kind of concepts will be more, you'll be more aware of these. If not, they might be a little bit new. And for some students, this kind of language is part of the first step toward understanding the field of cybersecurity. So the idea of ensuring availability, integrity, authentication, confidentiality, and non-repudiation of data, those are some of the core principles or concepts of cybersecurity. So that helps ground cybersecurity education. I've already said cybersecurity is complex and dynamic. So although, those concepts provide a nice grounding to the field of cybersecurity, there's a lot to it, from the more technical hardware, software, and networks, to this idea of data and what it represents, to people interacting with those technical components, people developing policies, and then that integration between what's happening in cyberspace and then what happens in the physical world and the real felt impacts of cybersecurity. And cybersecurity matters because society is increasingly reliant on that complex cyberspace that we've built together, which is both fragile and vulnerable. So because it is so interconnected and it's a network of networks, it's very dynamic, and security wasn't intentionally built into the design. there's just an ever-changing and evolving world to engage in through cybersecurity. I just brought up, I'll talk a little bit about the Teach Cyber courseware in just a second, but the first unit tackles what is cybersecurity. So if you're interested in integrating, just introducing the idea of cybersecurity to your students, this is a great unit to look at and pull into your class. Cybersecurity education has been developing. Here's a few example programs and opportunities on the Teach Cyber website under resources. We link to several of these, from camps, clubs, apprenticeships, to different type of curriculum that's available, certifications and what they are intended to do, and then the guidelines, which I'll talk about here next. So one of the projects that we've worked on with the National Cryptologic Foundation is the development of a set of guidelines. They're really intended to provide an answer to what students should know and be able to do after a cybersecurity course. So what is that, the learning outcomes for students to really understand the breadth and depth of cybersecurity at an introductory level. This project was over about a 2-year span. We worked with several K-12 educators, post-secondary educators, and experts in the field to identify what resulted as 8 big ideas, enduring understandings, learning objectives, and essential knowledge statements. So I'd really encourage you to spend some time. They're linked both here at the National Cryptologic Foundation as well as on the Teach Cyber website to kind of review through those. There's some great videos as well on the NCF website to kind of orient if this is a newer area and you're thinking about teaching. I think it provides a good grounding of the guidelines and what might be a foundation for an introductory cybersecurity course. Here's just an image of the 8 big ideas. They aren't intended to be kind of taught in order, beginning, let's say, with ethics and then moving on to establishing trust. The lines intersecting are intended to portray that this is an interconnected domain, and understanding data security means understanding some of the essential components of, let's say, the CIA triad: confidentiality, integrity, and availability within a larger context of an adversary. And often most of the decision making, there's an element of risk and trade-offs. And so you can see as you work through thinking about cybersecurity, a lot of these big ideas overlap. So from those big ideas, we worked with several teachers to develop courseware that's available. It's free, Creative Commons. You just go to the website, you're able to create an account. Once you're approved to do that, you're able to download whichever lessons or the entire course that you would like, adapt and use in your classroom. Right now, there are 8 units. Each unit provides an overview, a guide, and then lessons. We really tried to build it for the teacher. So there's a teacher version and then a student version of every activity and lab, answer keys, and resources and references. And we're trying to continually improve. We've just are working through unit 5. So we've updated units 1 through 4. So if you've been to the site recently, there are newer versions of those first 4 units based off pilot testing last year. And we are working with some teachers this year that are teaching it as well and getting some great feedback. Just wanted to point out, if this is your first introduction to this idea of the big ideas or Teach Cyber, and you'd like to kind of see an activity, we're hosting a 90-minute virtual workshop on Saturday the 11th, and there's the URL to sign up for that if you're interested. So the other question that I was asked is, what about teacher certification in cybersecurity education? Well, the National Cybersecurity Teaching Academy is what we think one of, if not the first program to offer a certification in cybersecurity education. So this is a 12 graduate level credit hour program. It's based on those guidelines, those 8 big ideas. It is being developed through the expertise of 10 partner institutions from across the country. The course topics include foundations of cybersecurity, a teaching cybersecurity, a hands-on practicum to get some real experience working in the field of cybersecurity. Another great thing about this program is teachers will be in a cohort across the country. It will be delivered virtually. You have access to innovative curriculum and resources. And what's wonderful is this is supported through the National Security Agency. So we're able to offer 90 scholarships to cover tuition and fees. Courses are going to begin this summer. If you're interested in just learning more about the program, we're hosting a series of information sessions and starting, I believe, this week into next week. We're going to record those too. So if you're interested, you can sign up and ask for a recording. Just wanted to point out that there's 3 institutions that will be granting the graduate certificate in cybersecurity education: DePaul, University of Arkansas Little Rock, and University of Louisville. Each of those will have consistent curriculum across the 3, but then they're going to have kind of tailored courses as well. So these are just outlining, and in that information session, we'll go in a little bit more detail of what's similar and what's kind of distinct across those. In terms of the application is for the scholarship will be due January 21st. And then if awarded one of those scholarships, you can then apply to the program that the scholarship will support, whether it's at DePaul, University of Arkansas, or University of Louisville. And then, like I said, the first course, 2 courses will begin in the summer, and then the remaining 2 courses will be the summer following. And I just wanted to provide our team's contact information. So if you have a question about the big ideas, if you have a question about Teach Cyber, if you have a question about the NCTA, the National Cybersecurity Teaching Academy, if you have a question just about K-12 cybersecurity education, Teach Cyber is focused primarily at the high school level, but we are interested in exploring other avenues. Right now, for example, Sabrina is working on a club kit that will target more of the middle school, high school area. So we hope to be able to offer that soon. So we're interested in collaborating and partnering with teachers, administrators, university faculty, whoever has a passion for K-12 cybersecurity education. So don't hesitate to reach out to us. I'm really excited that Ben and Damien are on the call. Ben has helped with teacher professional development through Teach Cyber. I know he's teaching or will be teaching this coming semester, the Teach Cyber curriculum. Damien was one of our pilot test teachers last year, provided a lot of great feedback to us. So I'm sure they have some good information to share as well.
I hope folks understand the gravity of what Jenny just shared with this National Cybersecurity Training Academy. I think, or Teacher Academy, I think this is something that we've been talking about for years, and getting teachers actually certified in this realm. I am so happy that you guys got the grant from NSA. Looking forward to promoting it, obviously, on our site and in the cyber chat. In fact, I just dropped Melissa a note for, if you guys have a one-pager, we'll put it on our nice K-12 booth that starts on Monday, etc. So congratulations. I think this is phenomenal. Can't wait to see this kick off in the summer of 2022.
Yeah, we're really excited. I think it says a lot to have so many different institutions, community colleges, 4-year institutions wanting to collaborate and share curriculum. And that has been really encouraging to see. So we've been meeting for a couple months now, and the passion and interest and the need that they all see is driving the NCTA. So I think it'll be a really impactful program. We're hoping that it's the first cohort.
Right.
We're hoping there'll be other cohorts in the future that NSA or others that want to support and fund teacher scholarships. That's something we've been talking a lot about and wanting to share. So we're really excited. So if you're interested, I put the link to the information session sign up. And again, go ahead and sign up even if the dates don't work and request a recording of the video.
So I'm a relatively new cyber teacher. In fact, a relatively new teacher. This is my third year teaching. I teach a high school class in Utah called Cybersecurity. And being my third year, my first year was very interesting. I had zero curriculum. I had zero textbooks. The administration had no idea what I was going to teach. I actually work full-time in cybersecurity as a vulnerability analyst for Oracle. So I teach for about 4 hours in the morning before I head out to the other place. So that's basically what my curriculum was. You hear of bringing your work home. Well, I brought it to school. I brought it in the classroom, which worked. It helped. I developed a little bit. And then I don't remember how it happened, but Teach Cyber, I saw that, and that saved my life. It really did. And so I'm always happy to do anything I can for them, because the reason I teach is because I think it's so important. Those statistics that we hear, the news every day, it's real. And I think it's times 10, honestly. I don't think 90% of the issues are reported. So I think the need is even greater. But the curriculum has been great for me because it's Teach Cyber. Whereas in the industry, it's, even entry level, it's no cyber. You already have to know it. So there was just nothing out there that started from the basics, from those fundamentals. And that's what I've really enjoyed about the curriculum, about the lessons. Love the labs that are out there. And I've really got to bring even those students aren't interested in cybersecurity or even IT, they can realize the importance of learning this material. And that's what I say almost every day. I said, even though you're not interested in IT or cybersecurity, this is a brave new world you're in. It's different from mine. I was born without the internet, which is hard to imagine. But these kids, that's all they know. And it's a new world, and there's dangers that I can't even conceive of yet, but the hackers are. And so it's so important to drill on those fundamentals at the high school. Personally, I would love to take this 4 years earlier. That's where it can be. I know it can be there because students excel in this better than I am. It took me, 15 years to get where I'm at, but they'll be there in a few months. They know this. This is how they live their life now. But yeah, that's me. I enjoy what I do, and I get to do what I enjoy. So I'm happy.
All right. Well said. So I wanted to take notes on everything that Ben was saying because we have so many similarities, except for maybe our backgrounds. So I have been teaching computer science for something like, I think I'm in my 23rd year, 29th year teaching. And, just growing up and getting closer and closer to technology, and then starting to teach middle school, and then eventually moving to high school, I will accent the same things that Ben has been saying. That Teach Cyber, and Jenny in particular, these people are lifesavers, and they're really helping to fill a void that exists. So I proposed a class in cybersecurity to my school, and they accepted it. And then the whiplash began. So I was thinking like post AP, like the programmers would learn cybersecurity, and I had no idea where to go for that curriculum. So I was checking out and going to workshops and, Gen Cyber and cyber.org and Teach Cyber. And the one thing that I think was really kind of missing, that I think Ben was also alluding to, was that there isn't like the standardized curriculum. There's Syracuse University. There's a college professor who has a great program up there. Maybe you should get that book. But, over the summer, my school said, oh yeah, well, we would like you to teach this not to the most advanced students, but this is going to be intro. So whiplash again, I have to refocus, try to do things that are more basic. The Teach Cyber curriculum really filled in going into the basics, understanding, on a very basic level, what is cybersecurity, how learning about networks and how these different attacks will manifest in different areas, that you have to learn these things before you can really understand them. We have kids that are, living with technology, but they have iPads and they don't necessarily know how things work, or even like which port is needed for a USB to charge their devices. So the curriculum really provided, that I'm thinking like the life-saving line, right? That helped us really kind of build our curriculum around what we felt we needed for our kids. So entry level, like freshmen and sophomores that may not really have that much technical sophistication yet, but it gave us this great platform that we can start. Like my hope, like I work at a private school where I'm the only computer science teacher. I would love to see us now develop the next level. And I think, we have to keep on building the curriculum to supply that need in light of everything that Jenny was mentioning in terms of the job prospects and the needs out there for cybersecurity analysts and every other conceivable position that will be needed. So yeah, that's kind of how I got into it. But I had basically 3 iterations so far of the cybersecurity class. It's getting better every single time. And simply because I'm learning, the Teach Cyber curriculum and learning how to produce the lessons and learning how to deliver them better. So that's about where I'm coming from, but very similar to Ben in many affects.
What do your students like about it, about Teach Cyber? Like, what do you see different sides of kids come out? Do they thrive in different lessons or different sections? Talk to us and to the teachers about, what you see on that end.
Well, I think one thing that I like about it, having a full curriculum, for one, is I usually teach, and I hate to say it, but teachers, you're teaching to the slowest students, or the ones who aren't interested, or the ones who love it. They're way far ahead of me already. And so luckily I get to give them, like, okay, here, do this lab now. Here, do this now. And they just eat it up. And I love that. And they become the new mentors, of course, mostly my mentor. But that's my favorite part of it. That's their favorite part, is that they can do it as fast or slow as they want. Some of them are really smart. They are just much more methodical. And they like to work through it. They like to understand, okay, I know how to put it together, but why does it go that way? And a lot of the lab that we do, they get to discover a lot of those mechanics. And it's great to see them discover a lot about themselves as they do the labs, doing things that they've never done before. So that's really exciting for them as well. Just the potentials. They always ask me, can we do a lab on this? Can we do a lab on that? And I don't know why they ask, because I always say, well, develop it and we'll do it. So it's great to have a sandbox, and the Teach Cyber curriculum, I can pick and choose, and students do that. So I think that's their favorite part, is they like to play with the sandbox, as all kids do.
I think that many of the, since I teach maybe some younger kids, freshmen and sophomores, I have a few older kids, but I think one of the things that they really kind of get excited about is there's content and there's information that they have to assimilate. But then when we have discussions, they get to actually put themselves and imagine themselves in this possible future. Maybe, they're going to go ahead and get so excited in my class that they're going to decide, hey, I want to study this in college. I hear that there are some jobs. Or I'm just fascinated by the problem solving and creative thought process that goes into it. But some of the discussions that the curriculum kind of prompts in unit 1, you're talking about ethics and you're talking about like, oh, well, what would you do in this position? They get to think of themselves, not as, the youngest members of this school population, just like learning things, but they get to actually think of themselves as young professionals. They get to maybe get a glimpse of that future through the curriculum where they're thinking about really complex problems. And, we had, situations in my school where they're thinking, oh, what do you think the school's policy would have to be to handle things like this? They can see things like, oh, that's why, our school, we have certain doors that are accessible and they're watched and you don't leave the back doors open. Like they're looking at security and methods of getting access to facilities. They're thinking like the adversary and they're able to put that into practice in a way that I think they really start to envision something much bigger than, just a class that they signed up on their roster and they have to do a requirement. I think they see the possibilities. And I think that's what's exciting to many of them.
I think what Damien said is so important, especially about teaching, thinking about it. You mentioned the ethics, Damien, and I've always said to my class, the only thing that is going to make us different, and by us, I mean students, the United States, our allies, different from, say, Chinese hackers or Russian hackers, is we're teaching the ethics alongside. That's something a lot of curriculums don't do. They're all hands-on. That's great. Teach the theory. That's great. But one thing about this curriculum, about the standards, is it also tells you the ethics. Like, why is this wrong? Let's learn about the actual laws. Why were they made? What are the incidents that actually occurred in history that created those situations? And that's really sparked discussion. Even among those students who aren't very technically inclined, they love those discussions. One thing I would encourage all new cyber teachers or old cyber teachers to do is every single morning before we do anything, they come in and on my board there's our cybersecurity briefing for the day. And it's always about something that's going on. And there's no shortage of that. Just whatever I saw on the news last night is usually going to be the discussion. There's a few questions, but sometimes it'll be older stuff. We talked about Y2K. I said, forget about this COVID stuff. Let me tell you about when the world was really going to end. And we had a great discussion last week on Y2K and why it happened and how to prevent it. Because security is about being secure, and everything's in on that. So, yeah, just wanted to say I agree, the ethics and all that.
Yes, thanks for throwing that in there, Ben, because I know, I taught for 6 years, and one of the things I've always kind of struggled with was, finding the relevant new news. And with cybersecurity, there's no short list of news that's available. You may not be familiar, like how integrated some of these labs are, because I think they're like really awesome. I had a ton of fun working with them. So if you guys could share a few things about that, a few specifics about that, I think that'd be really helpful for some teachers.
Well, the labs provided by the curriculum are really well organized and thought out. And essentially what they are is they'll go into certain concepts that you will have just lectured on, perhaps, and you'll get to utilize certain tools. Now, the labs themselves, you can do these labs just like a recipe, just like making a cake. You follow the instructions. And I say to my students, you know what? It's okay if you don't know exactly what you're doing, what you're typing in. That'll come. We're going to learn about that. Don't worry about it. And I just realized how true that is, because we're on like our 20th lab now, and they know exactly what this command means. They know exactly what they're doing and why they're doing it. But we do them in virtual environments. We use the US Cyber Range, but we also use virtual machines, VMs like the free Oracle box, VirtualBox, VMware. We also set up old computers that we bought at secondhand stores, and we'll attack those. The labs can be performed in a myriad of ways, and they're just always fun. I usually give 1 or 2 a week, and Some get them done in 30 minutes and some they take the whole week, but everyone always gets something out of them. So it's really good.
Yeah, I have similar experiences. I have a feeling my kids may be a little bit less sophisticated in that, like in the beginning of this year, a lot of my kids, like they were vaguely aware that there is an operating system called Linux. But now, like with some of the labs, okay, well, you have a Linux command line and you're learning how to navigate and get around in this environment. Now you're starting to use some tools that they never had access to before, and they can start to see like the application of these tools and how and why you would use them and what they do. Like they're learning about like cool technologies that, I'm just learning some of these things myself, like, regular expressions, and they're learning grep in Linux and like, oh, that's kind of cool where you're doing these pattern matches and looking for certain patterns in files or whatever. And I think that's like one of the really neat things. Another thing is I try to, as much as possible, sometimes I feel like I'm afraid I lecture too much, but I like to give them the assignments. I like to let them teach each other with presentations, with demonstrations. So they were doing one where they were doing, showing, the message in a box with 2 locks on it. So you can send a message across a network that might be unsecure in a way that no one but your intended recipient can see the actual message. Something like that, when they're physically, I have this big steel box with 2 locks on it, and the kids are showing each other how this encryption works that would protect, banking information and emails and every information you can imagine with, a virtual key. And I think it's kind of neat for them to kind of play with that and, create ciphers. Some kids were trying to teach, Caesar cipher, so simple substitution ciphers, and then @bash, and then moving on to other ciphers. And they're challenging each other and creating the exercises to kind of make everyone else think and apply what they are learning in order to, solve new problems. I think that's kind of the way that the labs kind of bring those concepts to life more and allow people to kind of, see the import and experience the import. It's not just stayed, oh, I read about this in my textbook. They get to do it, which, anytime you can have them do the stuff there, that's going to be the stuff they remember. That's how you're creating the memories for that they'll go back to years from now. At least that's my hope. We'll see. Hopefully they come back and say, oh yeah, I remember that lab.
I always remember one of the last questions I would ask my kids at the end of the year, but like, what was your favorite lab? And it always amazed me, like, what that activity was. And I had pretty much forgotten about it. So I'm sure that, like, I could totally see these labs, kids bringing up things. You're like, oh, I didn't even know that really sunk in for you. Like, good to know. Jenny, anything else you want to add about Teach Cyber? Because we are nearing the end of our chat today. And if any of you, of course, have questions or comments, put them in the chat.
Something, we've just been around not even 2 years as Teach Cyber. So we're learning and growing and excited to continue doing that. So if you do have questions, if you want to learn more about the NCTA or Teach Cyber, don't hesitate to reach out to us.
Okay. That's pretty much the end of our chat today. Mark, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Well, I just want to thank everybody for being here today. And like Jenny said, we're just starting down the road. One thing I learned from being with Jenny and Melissa Dark is that education is a marathon, not a sprint. And so we're really excited about being partnered with Teach Cyber and the opportunity to help our kids stay safe in cyberspace. So thanks for everybody for being here. Turn it over to Jenny. Take us out.
Thanks again so much, Jenny and Ben and Damien, for your time tonight. We really appreciate it. And I hope a lot of you teachers out there learn something valuable that you can bring back even maybe to your school. If you don't already have Teach Cyber, maybe that's something that you can implement at your school. And if you have questions, everyone at Teach Cyber is always so helpful, and they have many great professional development opportunities that can help you really grow and bring a meaningful experience to your students. So thank you all and have a good night.
Thanks, Jen and Mark.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.